Good afternoon. This is Debra V. Wilson. I'm back in West Yorkshire after a couple of days in London. It is Sunday, the 4th of November, 2018. The time is 1500 hours and 36 minutes, and that's GMT. It was a very productive trip. Got the field work done that I wanted to do. I was able to open some doors for additional field work. It's good to be back in London. The academic part of my trip to London was, as ever, edifying. For me, I've always liked to understand the pieces of how things work. Through some rather amazing life experiences, I ended up being in a position that I could understand the pieces of some national security models from a civil society perspective. In addition, in the late 1990s, I lived in a community that at that time there were people from the IRA that lived there, and the community I lived in, my opinion, was pivotal in terms of being responsible for the facilitation of what was in the provisional IRA standing down. So I got to understand that, and then a few years later, as ever and always, I was doing research about civil society and the way it manifested itself in the UK. And at some point, because the British intelligence was already aware of me in Dundalk, not just British intelligence, other European intelligence agencies, but British intelligence, that I was queried about what I was doing. That's a very British way to put it. I was queried by what I was doing, going to all these different meetings, because some of them, politically speaking, were diametrically opposed. So I was questioned about my motives, and said truthfully what I was doing, which is I wanted to understand what was happening. And at that point, it was a special branch, and the special branch began to ask me to look at my research when I came into the UK. And I traveled to the UK quite frequently, around 3 to 4 times a year. Because I didn't work for the state, because I was a private citizen, as I am now, and I'm civil society, I told them that I was going to tell people. They were asking me about my research, and his response was, the special branch officer's response was, you do that. So I did. So it was always transparent that the interviews I was doing and people I was talking to very well might end up in the hands of special branch, because I did not censor my activism because I knew they were watching me. That would be special branch, SO15. My opinion was then, and it is now, that I have a right to engage in lawful, non-disruptive activism. But the interesting thing happened, and it took me a few years to understand that the way in which the IRA, what was the provisional IRA, conceptualized special branch in the British state, and then the way the British state, which is common knowledge, conceptualized what was the provincial IRA. And then I started thinking that through a set of amazing circumstances, I had connections. I actually lived in a community in Dundalk that at that time had several. It was a community that people believed IRA members, although no one ever told me they were. No one in that community ever said they were IRA, but it was a community that I'd come to learn had a fair number of IRA people in it. So it was interesting to live in that community in hindsight, and years later to have the perspective, to garner a perspective on it, and then to then years later be in this situation where I was questioned by special branch, and to have that situation go on for several years and what that looked like. To see perspectives and to see how people engage and understand and assign meaning to self and others has always been fascinating to me. So in the meantime, I continue my activism and the experience of being in a militarized community in Dundalk, and I think that's fair to say, and then to be around a militarized people constantly being whenever I came into the country. So it wasn't perpetual, but it was every time I came in the country. It impacted me. And it also made me more curious to understand how we assign meaning and then how we assign meaning to others and self, about the ways in which we engage or don't engage. So from a civil society perspective, the business of national security here in this country, post-Dundalk consumed me, and wanting to understand from a civilian perspective how civil society was understanding national security modeling and their responses, and that's their activism. It never ceases to amaze me. I never cease to be touched and moved by the people I talk to. I never cease to question and query and want a better understanding how civil society, they see what they're doing. The thing about the engagement with special branch, they don't say anything. They ask questions and they don't say anything. But nevertheless, the questions they ask, I think, can educate you on the state's perspective on the situation. And from an analytical, academic perspective, I find that fascinating. From an analytical, academic perspective, the way in which activism works itself out, activism that I will show specifically is responding to the national security model of this country, and what that means, and what those responses mean, and what that means for collective national security for all of us. I think my three countries that I've picked to do the analysis and then comparisons of, I think it's perfect. I think it's highly complex here. And I think it's the activism here, and it's extremely robust. So the having to constantly tune my ear to acknowledging the loudness of the activism here, the loudness, the aggressiveness of it, to fine-tune my ear to that, metaphorically speaking, and focus on what is the message behind the method. Israel, what's fascinating for me is there's all types of activism emerging from Israel that's responding to the national security model. But the discourse that people have about Israel, you would think it was a flat land with no complexity from a political perspective, from a civil society perspective, and nothing could be further from the truth. So it's a perpetual sense of awe and wonder and discovery for me in Israel, because there is all manner of complexity of activism that has emerged from all manner of people who call Israel home. And to identify that and understand that is fascinating. And then in Canada, there's activism. Canada, I would say in a global sense, Canada has the antithesis to Israel in terms of brands. And yet Canada has a quite intensive amount of activism that's coming out of understanding the ways in which the state keeps her citizens safe. And so in Canada, for me, it's perpetual discovery. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's this organization, they're doing this, they're doing that. And so whilst I think out of my 3 countries, people are aware globally as well as within the country, I think I'm not a spokesperson for anyone other than self, but I think it's fair to say that in this country and beyond, people are aware of the activism emerging from this country. I think sometimes people get caught up in the loudness of it, the aggressiveness of it, the robust nature of it. But I think there's very little discovery in terms of identifying the fact that there is an intense amount of complexity in the activism coming out of the UK. Israel, I think people simply don't see it. I think people just simply don't see it. With all due respect to Bibi Netanyahu, I think people see Bibi Netanyahu. Now, no matter what you think about Bibi Netanyahu, some people love him, some people not so much. But you very rarely see in the press outside of Israel conversation about activism coming out of Israel, the multitude of activism coming out of Israel. And so for me to go on that journey many years ago here in London, not here, but here in England, someone encouraged me, it was a feminist, an Israeli feminist, encouraged me to explore the activism in Israel, and I've never stopped. And in Canada, because Canada is literally branded globally as the antithesis, I think it's fair to say, of Israel, and I think it's fair to say of the UK as well. But it's not from a civil society perspective a flat land either. It's not. It's activism that presents itself the way it should because it's emerging from Canada and First Nations communities. And so its emergence and expression is a reflection of the cultures from which it emerges. And so I find all that fascinating. So I've returned to my field work. There's loads of things I need to do. I'm going to do another podcast very briefly, and I'm proud of myself and patting myself on the shoulder that I didn't cry. My bus journey, I took a coach bus from West Yorkshire to London, a return journey trip. Time got away from me this morning, and then when I left out of Victoria Tube Station, I went out the wrong exit. I don't have a good sense of direction, so I saw this gentleman at the Victoria train station. I thought he was an employee. He wasn't. He was retired from the tubes. He's 87 years old. He's been married 3 times. His name's Patrick, and he's from Ireland. And he walked with me. He got me to my coach bus on time. I wanted to give him something for his time so he could buy himself a cup of tea and a cup of coffee, but he refused it. He said, no, that's not why I'm doing this. And I didn't think it was, but I just thought he went out of his way. So much due respect to Patrick. So, I guess I have to rescind that pat on the shoulder because I'm starting to cry now. In any case, this is Debra V. Wilson. I'll be posting more on this particular journey to London and more as well. Where it is appropriate, I will post. This is Debra V. Wilson. I'm back in West Yorkshire and planning my next field trip